Hello, testing. All right. Thanks, Rakesh, for inviting me over to this amazing stage. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Ethan Ng. I'm the CEO of BiKi.com Southeast Asia and International Markets. I guess a lot of you might now know a little bit about BiKi. And I want to talk about is the crypto winter over for good? And there's a lot of relevance with BiKi.com because we started in the peak of the crypto winter when a lot of companies are firing and restructuring. There's a special phenomenon where a special company by the name of BiKi was growing for 200 to 300% month to month in the peak of a bear market. I'm going to share with you about how we did it and what we learned from these lessons. So a little bit about the brief history of the cryptocurrency market. I guess a lot of you would have known in 2008, this entity or person by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin, and a few years later, 10,000 Bitcoins was purchased for 2 pizzas, and for the first time, there was a transaction value for Bitcoins. Fast forward to 2017, Bitcoin actually hit $1,000, and then it hit a peak of 19 grand in December. Why I want to talk about this is because Bitcoin, as we all know, in the mass market is the most popular and well-known cryptocurrency market. It's also a very good representation of the market shifts. Right, and we saw the price from 2009 and 2019. In the red arrow here is where we actually decided to start, and I will be sharing about this amazing story. So I want to give a bit of a crypto winter definition. It's actually a severe bear market where the crypto value actually dropped by 80%, and it actually resulted in poor sentiments. In the Google search results, you can see over here, it dropped tremendously. So I want to put it a little bit into context here, right? Just 3 years ago, right, ICOs by the name, which is Initial Coin Offering, right, there were only 29 registered ones with 90 million of funding. And then fast forward to 2017, there were over 1,000 registered and just under 8 billion of funding. That's 8,000 over %. Okay, so to put it even more into perspective, right, with all these 1,000 over projects that actually did all these funds, many of them were, over-promising and under-delivering. Only 29% according to a report from Ernst & Young's, actually delivered a product, right? So try to imagine this. For all these projects, right, when they actually have all these funds and the value of the crypto actually dropped by 80%, they had to restructure, they had to fire, they have to change their plans, their roadmap, and effectively it changed the entire market. Right, so what are the learning lessons that's been learned in this industry? So many projects, as I mentioned, failed to deliver on their promises. Many ran out of funding. And we see today, according to the Gartner hype cycle, we are in the plateau of productivity. It's a really interesting time in the industry because today we're hearing from so many projects to talk about emphasis on product development, where the FinTech, or you call it DeFi now, there's a lot of emphasis on releasing all these products. We see thousands of wallets released in the industry, and we see healthcare, we see logistics, all coming out with blockchain technologies. But there are also barriers to blockchain adoption, which is, I think mentioned earlier, regulatory uncertainty, inability to scale, intellectual property concerns, and of course, audit and compliance concerns. So the story I want to share, right, is we got an old idea that got some newfound interest. So try to imagine this, right? When, as I mentioned, all the crypto companies are actually downsizing and firing, we found an opportunity in the 3rd to 6th tier cities in the Chinese markets. And we found out that these lesser educated cities were mostly untapped in the Chinese markets, where the top exchanges that has existed for 5 years has been focused in these 1st to 2nd tier cities. And what we found out is that these communities, even though it's a bear market, were thriving. And a lot of these users that we onboarded to BiKi.com were new users. They were never on crypto market before. And a lot of them would question us, what is the bear market? Because the bear market was the bull market for them. So that's a really unique profile for us. And we took a big experiment, that was briefly lost in history. So I want to just put a little bit into perspective as well, especially with a lot of our friends that is still in the crypto space. we all know that the speed and the pace is really, really fast, right? It's all about expanding your terrain, it's all about scaling, and many actually lost touch with what are the more important essence in this whole industry. So I want to talk about these two names, Michael Ovitz and Y Combinator. So Michael Ovitz is one of the co-founders or founders of one of the most successful Hollywood agencies, right? And what he specialized in is in creating agency that package scriptwriters, producers, directors, and music producers together in a package. And because of that, it helped Hollywood movies scale really, really quickly. And a lot of agencies that we know today still model from what Michael Ovitz did. Tom Cruise is also one of his artists. And then Y Combinator, as we all know, is a seed funder and accelerator in the startup industry. And they also actually introduce connections to these startups. So what's the relevance with that and BiKi? So we also featured in Forbes as the top 10 blockchain companies to look out for in 2019. So I want to share a little bit about the story. So when we started in August 2018, when a lot of companies were firing and restructuring, we thought we were smarter than the market, but boy, we are not. In October 2018, we found that we only had 2 months of leadway left because most of the projects that we listed were dying anyway. All right, we went back to the drawing board. We thought about how can we actually do better, and no matter how we actually came back to the drawing board, it came back to one conclusion, which is to literally help these projects to launch, to do their community, and to do their PR. And we did that all for free, out of desperation, right? And by December, we found out that most of these projects that were struggling in our exchange were driving a lot of volume for us in this new crypto space that I mentioned, from 3rd to 6th tier cities. And in December, we found our model, and which is to help these projects to accelerate and to grow. Hence the relevance with Michael Ovitz and Y Combinator. So I want to talk about why cryptocurrencies have a future among other assets. So as we can see over here, the crypto space is far, far, far smaller than the rest of the asset classes that is already been around for decades. But I want to talk about a special experience I went through. So last year, I was the marketing lead for Huobi Global, which is a top 3 exchange in the world. We did something unprecedented that is not shown in any of these numbers, right? And from our numbers back then, we saw that the Vietnam market was really special. The trading volume was huge, and the communities there were thriving. So I was the first person who went to that market. I went to study the market. I spoke to miners, government sectors, VCs, traders, VIP traders, medias, community leaders, and it was really, really deep surveys that I did. What I found out, right, from this country was that the median age was 26 years old. It was a really unique profile, and their top human resource is in the IT sector, and that they couldn't take out more than 5,000 USD out of the country. So let's think about it from their perspective. They have a huge struggle to get into some of these investment classes that are mentioned here. And yet, the numbers from this country was thriving a lot. So what we are seeing from this media reports and all this does not represent what I saw firsthand in this country. So, and then we put it into perspective, how many countries are out there that has a similar profile with what Vietnam had? Serbia, Georgia, Chile, Argentina, Brazil. Right, so in today's perspective, a lot of companies and exchanges are talking about these developed countries and the opportunities. But what we're not looking at is these opportunities that we could help as exchange and projects to help these developing countries too. Right, and with regards to the future, we found out that more hedge fund, there are actually more funds this year than last year. And asset managers are successful in raising money for crypto funds. And the launch of Bitcoin exchange also encourages the future for institutional investors. And what's our view on how the future landscape will pan out? So as we can see some patterns in the financial crisis 10 years ago, US Federal Reserve cut the interest rate, and the same pattern is repeating in the last few months when interest rates are going to zero or negative. And also in perspective as well, in 2008, when the Lehman Brothers crisis started, that was also when Bitcoin actually got interest. That was when a lot of other people were looking at alternatives as well. And not forgetting, in 2020, the block rewards for Bitcoin were also half. That meant that there's scarcity for it too. If you look at the hash rates, it's higher than before. It's because of the halving. And what's in the future? So, how do I put this? So, from history, I think a lot of people have been really, really bad and notoriously bad at predicting the future of tech. There's a famous saying in 1903, the horse is here to stay, the car is a novelty, right? And Ford's lawyers were actually advising against him to invest into Ford as well. And many people were wrong about the radio, the TV, and of course, the internet. And on that note, I want to say, why can't we keep an open mind and our imaginations up for Bitcoin, for cryptocurrencies and blockchain? And for all these developed countries and all these developing countries, we see a huge opportunity that we can actually aid in these economies. And on a side note, we think that in the next 3 years, Bitcoin for sure will go to 10 times the price. And there's one more thing that we need to watch, which is for the Chinese market, especially China, we know that they're coming out with a national cryptocurrency. We feel that some of these countries will follow suit as well. And BiKi, we are actually positioned in the right space in the Asian exchange to benefit from this. And more importantly, we want to help all of these economies to grow with this new crypto market users. Having said that, I would like to thank everybody for your attention. Any questions, you can give it to me later. Thank you.